Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we are diving deep into the O-1 visa. You might have heard it called the Genius Visa, and for good reason. It's basically the key to the US for people who are at the very, very top of their field. We're going to break down exactly how it all works. You ever wonder about that? When you see some incredible scientist, a world-renowned artist, or a brilliant entrepreneur from another country working here in the States, how do they even manage that? Well, a lot of the time, the answer is the O-1 visa. It's a special visa category designed just for them. So here's our roadmap for today. First up, what even is this extraordinary ability visa? Then we'll look at the two different paths you can take, one for the thinkers and one for the creators. After that, we hit the most important part. How do you actually prove you're extraordinary? Then we'll walk through the application itself and wrap up with the real-world costs and some key tips. All right, let's start at the beginning. The official name is the Visa for Individuals with Extraordinary Ability or Achievement. Yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, right? That's exactly why pretty much everyone just calls it the Genius Visa. Okay, so here's the official definition. There are two phrases here that are absolutely key: extraordinary ability and temporarily. This isn't a green card, so it's not permanent. It's a temporary visa that basically says, we recognize you're at the peak of your profession and we want you to come to the US to do that specific work. Now, this is what makes the O-1 so special. First, it's super exclusive. We're talking about that tiny percentage of people at the absolute top. Second, and this is a huge deal, there's no annual limit. There's no lottery system like with the H-1B visa, which is a massive, massive advantage. And finally, it can be a fantastic launching pad to getting a green card later on. So, the O-1 visa isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It's actually split into two very distinct categories, and it all depends on what your field is. So let's figure out which journey might be yours. And you can see the divide right here. On one side, you've got the O-1A. This is for the scientists, the business leaders, the innovators. The standard here is incredibly high. It's called extraordinary ability. Then, on the other side, you have the O-1B. This is for the artists, the creators, people in TV and film. Now, the standard for them is distinction, which is still way up there, but it's considered just a little more flexible. And this brings us to the absolute heart of the matter. See, it's not enough to just be extraordinary. You have to prove it. And you have to prove it with cold, hard evidence. This is where the real work of the O-1 application truly begins. So, is there a magic number? You bet there is. It's 3. To build a solid case for an O-1 visa, you have to show that you meet at least 3 of the 8 official criteria. This number is the core of your entire petition. And for the O-1A, these are the 8 criteria you can choose from. You can kind of group them into a few buckets, right? You've got things that show public recognition, like major awards or articles written about you. Then you have things that show your original contributions, like patents or scholarly articles you've written. And finally, you have things that prove your value, like a super high salary or a critical role at a top company. You don't need all of them, just rock-solid proof for any 3. Okay, so you know which category you fall into, and you know the criteria you need to meet. So how do you actually pull this all together and apply? Let's map out the journey step by step. It really boils down to 4 main steps. First, the big one. You gather all that evidence we just talked about. Second, you have to find a U.S. petitioner, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. Third, that petitioner files the official form, the I-129. And finally, you wait for the decision. Simple in theory, but the devil's in the details. And please, listen up, because this point trips up so many people. You cannot, I repeat, cannot apply for an O-1 visa on your own. You absolutely must have a U.S. petitioner. This can be the company that's hiring you, or if you're more of a freelancer, it can be a U.S. agent who lines up gigs for you. So how long does all this take? Well, as you can see, that first phase, just gathering your evidence, is often the longest. It can take anywhere from 3 months to over a year. Then, once you file, standard processing can add several more months to your wait time. And that, my friends, is why premium processing is so popular. You pay an extra fee, but you get an answer in just 15 calendar days. It's a game changer. Okay, for our final section, let's get really practical. We're going to talk money, share some pro tips, and look at what happens after you finally get that amazing approval notice. When you look at where the money goes, it's actually pretty surprising. The official government filing fees, they're just a tiny sliver of the pie. The vast majority of the cost, about 3/4 of it, goes to attorney fees. And that really tells you just how complex and labor-intensive these applications are. And this chart gives you some real-world numbers. Legal fees can run anywhere from $5,000 to well over $15,000, just depending on how complicated your case is. And that optional premium processing fee we mentioned, that's about $2,500. So yeah, it's a serious investment, but for the people who need it, it's absolutely worth it. Now, here is a golden piece of advice. Your evidence, your awards, your articles, that's the what. But what gives it all meaning are strong reference letters. These letters, from other respected experts in your field who can vouch for you, tell the immigration officer the why. They explain why your work is so important. They are absolutely critical. So you made it. You got approved. What happens now? Well, your initial O-1 visa is usually granted for up to 3 years, and it's tied to the specific work or project you're coming to do. After that, you can apply for 1-year extensions for as long as you need to keep that work going. So, we've laid out the entire map for you, from what the O-1 visa is, to how you prove your talent, to navigating the whole application process. It is, without a doubt, a challenging journey, but it's an achievable one for the best of the best around the world. So the only real question left is, are you ready to start yours?